city skies streaked and showered with light as the clock struck midnight on January 1st, 2025. Traditions are as diverse as the countries themselves. In one instance, this is the only time of year when many people hear the song Auld Lang Syne, which translated from the Scots language means old long since, or more colloquially, for old time's sake. The Scottish poem's been around for centuries. The tradition of playing the tune on New Year's dates back to the 1920s when an American band leader started performing it on the radio at midnight. The song and the event bring moments of reflection, anticipation, and celebration as the world welcomes a new year. Well, a very happy new year and a very warm welcome to the world from A to Z. We are your nonpartisan source for news and international events, and I'm so happy to see you. I'm Carl Azuz. From Colorado to Delaware, winter storm advisories stretch across the United States, potentially affecting tens of millions of Americans headed back to school and work following the holidays. More than 1,000 flights were canceled Sunday as a blast of cold air, snow, and ice gripped the central part of the country. The weather system that brought rain to the West Coast on Friday met up with an Arctic blast of air as it moved east, and forecasters expected that 2/3 of the United States, from the middle to the East Coast, would get significantly colder temperatures than normal for this time of year, with a freeze expected as far south as Florida and the possibility of bringing America's coldest January in 14 years. An expansion of the polar vortex, a mass of cold air around the North Pole, can and does happen this time of year, and it usually brings scenes like this with it.
Word of knowledge. Which U.S. president lived longer than any other? John Adams, George H.W. Bush, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan. Several American leaders lived into their 80s or 90s, but the only one whose life exceeded 100 years was Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter was the 39th U.S. president. He served in office between 1977 and 1981, and on December 29th, the Democrat from the state of Georgia passed away at his home in the city of Plains.
From a small-town Georgia peanut farmer to President of the United States, Jimmy Carter aspired to make government competent and compassionate.
Our social and political progress has been based on one fundamental principle: the value and importance of the individual.
After 7 years as a naval officer, he returned home to Plains, Georgia, before entering into politics, eventually being elected governor of Georgia, using the platform to speak out against racism.
I say to you quite frankly that the time for racial discrimination is over.
Becoming president in 1977, his achievements were notable, including the Camp David Peace Accords in 1978, the framework for peace between Israel and Egypt. But there were dark days too, including the Iran hostage crisis that, together with the continuing inflation at home and an energy shortage, contributed to Ronald Reagan's landslide victory in 1980. Jimmy and his wife Rosalind founded the Carter Center in 1982, promoting peace, democracy, human rights, and economic and social development all over the world. In 2002, his work earned him the Nobel Peace Prize. A devout Christian, his life was largely defined by his faith and service to others. He spent decades teaching Sunday school in the small town where he was raised and volunteering with Habitat for Humanity. The longest-lived president in American history.
I love you!
Leaves behind a legacy of love.
Well, the best thing I ever did was marrying Rosalind.
In Plains, Georgia, I'm Ivan Rodriguez.
On this date in world history. On January 6, 2021, supporters of then-President Donald Trump marched to the U.S. Capitol building following a speech by the outgoing U.S. leader. Neither he nor many of his supporters in the crowd accepted the results of the 2020 election, in which President Trump officially lost the vote to former Vice President Joe Biden. Violence broke out when members of the crowd approached and entered the Capitol and disrupted Congress's work to certify the election results. Several people involved died during or after the riot. Hundreds were arrested in the year after it occurred, and officials say the Capitol had more than $1 million worth of damage. Congress convened in the hours afterward to certify the 2020 election. Rewinding the clock to this date in 1839, the nation of Ireland experienced its deadliest storm on record. What became known as the Night of the Big Wind brought hurricane force winds to the island. They lasted for hours and took a disastrous toll on a place where many poorly built houses weren't able to withstand the storm. Dozens of lives were lost, and as many as a quarter of the homes in part of Dublin were either destroyed or damaged.
It's okay.
The ladies in blue have been waiting all day for this delivery. A Schnauzer, a Black Lab mix, and their 2 litters of puppies. 13 dogs in all, rescued in one afternoon. It's a typical day at Big Dog Ranch Rescue of Alabama.
Your average shelter does not typically house a mom and puppies in there because it takes too much time and it ties up the spots for other dogs coming in.
Located on more than 100 acres, Big Dog Ranch Rescue is a dog hub. Unwanted dogs from animal shelters across the Southeast spend about 8 weeks here in quarantine, receiving care, getting spayed, neutered, vaccinated, and training. Then, the rehabilitated dogs are adopted and transported to their final destinations, forever homes in the North. The trend of relocating animals from one region to another began in the mid-2000s when a slew of massive hurricanes devastated the South and left thousands of pets homeless. Today, many southern states are still overpopulated with shelter dogs, while the North is facing a shortage. Big Dog Ranch is helping to bridge that gap. Out of the 350 dogs on site today, more than half have been rehabilitated and are ready to be relocated and adopted. Lori Allen helped launch this site and calls the space redemptive. She's heard the stories about the dogs that lived and trained here nearly 30 years ago. From 1984 to 2011, greyhound racing and betting was big business in Alabama. This land was used as a greyhound training facility. Inside each of these buildings, dozens of greyhounds were housed in 36-inch stackable crates on wheels.
This was the length of the kennel. This was the height of the kennel, where the dog had to stand up, not tall enough for a greyhound.
13 years later, this is all that's physically left of greyhound racing. Rolled up fencing.
It kind of makes us remember why we're here and what we're doing here.
Big Dog Ranch Rescue, like many other similar organizations, is mostly funded by donations. In 2023, it employed more than 200 people and also relied on the work of numerous volunteers. Going coast to coast today to recognize 3 of the schools we heard from just before the holidays. First, from the Pacific Wonderland, we see you at J Bar J Learning Center. Mr. Kelly's class is with us from the city of Bend, Oregon. In the community of Westover, Maryland, it's great to see the students and teachers of Holly Grove Christian School in the Old Line State. And from the capital of Big Sky Country, we welcome Mr. McGinley's class of C.R. Anderson Middle School. The Cubs are online in Helena, Montana.
A New York homeowner stumbled upon a surprise buried in their backyard that turned out to be a discovery millennia in the making. A massive mastodon jaw, complete with giant teeth, was unearthed after the homeowner spotted a pair of the teeth protruding from the soil. They say they knew it was something special and called in experts from the New York State Museum, whose digging efforts yielded the well-preserved jaw, as well as a separate toe bone and rib fragment, which they believe belonged to an adult male mastodon. Mastodons were distant relatives of the elephant, but not to be confused with their woollier counterparts, the mammoth. The discovery is the first of its kind in 11 years in New York State, which experts say is a hotspot for mastodon-related finds, some 150 to date, in fact. The remains will now undergo analysis for carbon dating and dietary reconstruction and will eventually go on display to the public, all thanks to one eagle-eyed homeowner.
You could still call it a mammoth discovery. Unless the different species makes an elephantine difference, you're afraid someone might take you to task, and you woolly want to stomp out critics who might call you a Dumbo for not mastodoning perfect accuracy when reporting on a chunk show. I'm Carl Azuz, ringing in the new year with puns and, more importantly, you. Thanks for watching The World from A to Z. You mean the world to me.